Mercy is never watched from a distance. Welcome to the teaching for the Parish Evangelization Cell System. And my teaching is based primarily on the parable of the Good Samaritan. Christ does not give us an abstract definition of mercy. He talks about mercy through parables. He used parables as a significant means of communication to explain the kingdom of God and God's expectations for people. Luke gives us 8 parables of mercies, namely the parable of the 2 debtors and their creditor, the parable of the Good Samaritan, the parable of the lost sheep, the parable of the lost coin, the parable of the prodigal son or the lost son, the parable of Dives, the rich man and the beggar Lazarus, the parable of the unrighteous judge and the persistent widow, and the parable of the Pharisee and the publican. Now, in the parable of the Good Samaritan, Luke has given us an evocative definition of mercy. And he uses the Greek word splanchizomai, which means it is a verb that it is used 12 times in the whole New Testament. It means when someone is moved in his or her inner parts to pity. The Samaritan was moved with compassion when he saw the wounded man. So, in other words, to show mercy means to feel a physical gut, a physical kick in the gut, a cramp, to have a cramp in the belly. It was this gut reaction by the Samaritan that allowed him not to pass by the wounded man as the priest and the Levite did. Now, we are called, like Jesus and the Samaritan, to be people of encounter, engaging people. Now, how can we engage ourselves in the pain and suffering of others? How? Both Christ and the Samaritan saw, stopped, and touched. And we, like the Samaritans, we are being challenged that in the sight of suffering, we need to stop and to touch. These 3 verbs prompt us to show mercy and to shoulder the pain of those who are enduring suffering. My friends, the real difference does not exist between Christians, Muslims, and Jews, or between atheists, agnostics, or believers. The real difference lies between those who stop and those who do not stop to help the wounded and the suffering. As I said, mercy is never watched at a distance. Let us focus on the verb to touch. Christ, in the Gospel, touches the untouchable. He touches the leper, and he also touches the son of the widow of Nain, who was dead. Now, we might say, if I see, if I stop, if I touch, I'm not going to change the world. Of course, we're not going to change the structures of iniquity. But when I see, I stop and touch, I can actually inject the idea in the world that suffering has not got the last word, that suffering is not insurmountable, invincible. So, in the side of suffering, we can actually take 5 different attitudes. We can take 5 different reactions. We can take the reaction of the legal expert. His attitude was that the wounded man was just a topic to be discussed, an intellectual discussion. We can take the attitude also of the brigands, of the bandits. For them, the wounded man was an object of exploitation. We can also take the attitude of the priest and the Levite. For them, the wounded man was a problem to be avoided, a sheer nuisance. We can also take the attitude, the reaction of the innkeeper. For him, the wounded man was a customer to be served by money. However, we can also take the attitude and the reaction of the Samaritan man. For him, the wounded man was a human person worthy of respect and love. Now, the Samaritan's attitude was indeed an engaging attitude, an encountering attitude, and it reflects the engaging attitude of God throughout the history of salvation. The Samaritan, like the attitude of God, the Samaritan's attitude embodies mercy. And Luke gives us 3 powerful verbs. The Samaritan binds the wound, he takes the wounded man to the inn, and also he looks after him. 3 verbs that reflect also the interference, the engaging attitude of God in salvation history. Now, this tells us something, again, that mercy is never watched at a distance. If we are called to show mercy, we have got to do it at a cost, with personal sacrifice and sacrifices. But there is also a lesson here for each one of us. And it is not a given, it's not obvious that those who frequent the house of God and know about mercy, they can actually show love to others. The priest and the Levite, despite being representatives of the Jewish religion, they abysmally failed to put and to show mercy in practice. Unlike God, His Son Jesus Christ, and the Samaritan. So, despite their religiosity, they were in actual fact ungodly. The Samaritan, however, who was a schismatic Jew, he embodied the engaging and the encountering attitude of God, of the God of Israel, particularly of His Son Jesus Christ, by showing mercy to the wounded man. And he reflects and epitomizes, embodies God and His Son Jesus Christ. When God and His Son Jesus see pain and suffering, they respond. So we are also being called not only to see and pass by, but to stop and respond. God bless you.